So Netflix finally released, I think either yesterday or the day before, maybe, um, their new show, Neo Yokio. And the show, before it was even released, had already garnered some controversy with the trailer, um, mostly stemming from the fact that it looked like a how to draw manga book if you made an entire show like that, because it's not actually an anime. It was made by people in America. And the fact that Jaden Smith plays the main protagonist, and apparently people hate Jaden Smith for some reason. I mean, I know After Earth was a shitty movie, but like, other than that, why would you particularly hate him? I don't know. But I honestly was pretty intrigued with the first trailer. I thought the presentation was really bizarre and interesting, and that the the voice acting was really interesting, the dialogue. I was really intrigued by the trailer. And honestly, that's my impression of the entire show. It was very intriguing. Just the world of Neo Yokio, everything that comes together, the voice acting, the presentation, the music, the art style, all that stuff makes for a very intriguing experience. And since this is, a classical, your daddy's fucking review, let's go into the story. Because it's really not apparent by any of the trailers what actually the deal is, particularly. So essentially the story follows Kaz Khan, who is a member of the Magistocracy, I think is what it's called, which is basically a class, an upper class group of people who were magic users, exorcists, who the city of Neo Yokio hired to exorcise demons and stuff a bunch of years ago. And they basically rose to financial prowess, financial prominence, and a bunch of social status because of their work for the city. But there is still infighting amongst the upper class against the aristocracy and the magistocracy. The aristocracy considering the magistocracy to be still basically peasants at heart or whatever, and referring to them as rat catchers, which is kind of a slur, I suppose. So even though it is between groups of upper class people and the rest of society not really making a distinction between the two, there is kind of class struggle in that regard. And speaking of class struggle, there are a lot of very heavy communist themes in the story. One of the main characters, I forget her fucking name. Some of the names in this show are a little weird. But she was the former fashion blogger girl who Kaz exorcises a demon from. And she has this awakening of how vapid and materialistic and selfish and unequal the society of Neo Yokio is. Because essentially, as is demonstrated later in the show, basically the rich and middle class live in this pretty cool, kind of futuristic, it's kind of bizarre, world, whereas the poor live in, I think they called it Long Island Walled City, so literally just like, the shittest way possible, and the poor are really resentful of the rich, as you can see in episode 6, I think, where they drive through that as part of a thing, and the poor just start fucking attacking their car for, unprovoked, really. So, and the former fashion blog character bombs the Bachelor board, which, is a board in the middle of Times Square, because Neo Yokio is New York, basically. The Bachelor board, which, lists Neo Yokio's most eligible bachelors, which is kind of a weird thing, but because she views it as a symbol of kind of the shitty, oppressive social hierarchy type stuff. And you see for the character Arcangelo that Arcangelo is presented as Kaz's rival throughout most of the story, but after the Bachelor board, ranking board is blown up, he wants to be Kaz's friend because I don't have any social motivation to hate you now. Which, It's just weird, you know? Just shows how fucked up the society of Neo Yokio is. And how all of the... there's another episode where it's kind of revealed that even the, you know, quote-unquote things that are the set-in-stone traditions, which, you know, are for elegance and class and style, are overturned at the drop of a hat if it becomes inconvenient at all. Which kind of... the show is really about Kaz's kind of rose-colored view of Neo Yokio is kind of disintegrating around him. As he, you know, he kind of gets dragged through the mud, so to speak, socially, through a series of, you know, just bad social stuff that happens to him, and really just kind of having his eyes be opened to a lot of the shittiness that happens in Neo Yokio. But that's kind of just like the plot and themes. I mean, the plot is basically just him going around doing exercising stuff and just goofy stuff, really. Plot isn't super important, particularly. The voice acting, which, you know, again, Jaden Smith voicing the main character, people are probably not gonna... you know, people are probably gonna be like, oh, it's fucking shitty. I don't want no black man voicing my main character. Well, honestly, Jaden's performance, while it was kind of like stilted and weird, I thought it was really enthralling for some reason. You know, it was... it fit the character somehow, despite being not exactly technically the best. And that's how I feel about a lot of the characters. There are some celebrity voice actors, like Steve Buscemi plays one of the characters. Probably some other people I recognize, but you know, just don't know the names of. Playing usually minor characters. John DiMaggio's in there. And some of it is... a lot of the dialogue is kind of... has this stilted, just kind of slightly uncomfortable flow to it. And honestly, I think that adds to the show's atmosphere of being this kind of in limbo, high-class aristocracy thing. Because the character Lexi, for example, is apparently a member of the magistocracy and some kind of, like, nobleman of some type, but, you know, he talks like an average Joe black man. Like, he calls, you know, he calls people B and stuff like that. So it's just kind of this very bizarre, like, culture thing, which I feel the stilted dialogue kind of adds to just the out-of-this-worldness of Neo Yokio culture, especially high culture. And yeah, like I said, I think Jaden does, again, maybe not the best job technically, but certainly a very interesting job playing Kaz Khan. What else? The animation, I would say, is probably the low point of the show. The character designs are, you know, again, kind of these weirdly basic, how to draw manga-esque caricatures, I suppose. But I think they also, in their... it's kind of an uncanny valley thing, where it's like halfway between Western cartoon animation designs and actual anime designs. Kind of the uncanny valley effect of that also serves to just present how bizarre Neo Yokio is and out of place it is. But as I was saying, the animation is probably the lowest point of the show for me. It's pretty limited, honestly. There's only like one action scene where they even tried to do any kind of dynamic movement, and it looked like they had to slow the frame rate down a lot. And most of the show is pretty much just people standing around and talking. So animation's not super great. There's a bunch of weird, like, cutaways where character will say something surprising, and then usually Kaz will go like, make like a weird face, which, I mean, that's all right, but it's just a little bizarre. The dialogue, I think, is... I kind of already talked about, how stilted it sounded, but, like, the content of the dialogue itself is actually pretty funny a lot of the time. For example, Kaz, frequents this fashion store. And so the fashion attendant guy is like, "Oh, yes, Mr. Khan, are you finding everything all right?" Kind of implying that he's like a frequent shopper there and that he goes there all the time, which, as you see throughout the series, he does. And he's like, "Yes, fashion store clerk." And that's the only way he ever refers to him throughout the whole thing. And he does that with a few other people as well. It's pretty funny that he only views people as their title, which also kind of gives you an insight to his really utilitarian view of other people, not really particularly caring about their personalities or their struggles or anything like that. There's some pretty funny running gags throughout the show where Khan brings people Toblerone. Like, Toblerone is a recurring thing in the series, which I thought was pretty funny. Just kind of these weird, out of left field gags that honestly hit surprisingly hard and got a good chuckle out of me a few times. So the show's pretty funny as well, I would say, as well as being a little bit poignant. I wouldn't say the themes really go very deep into, class struggle or oppression or anything like that. But just the fact that they're touched on at all is kind of surprising for me, especially from a show like Neo Yokio, which is just, again, so bizarre and crazy. That it was still engaging for me. The music is probably, in my opinion, the most important thing for the atmosphere of Neo Yokio. Nearly all of it is these very posh, snobby-sounding, usually string pieces of classical music, and those pretty much pervade throughout the entire soundtrack. I'm pretty sure most of them are, actual classical pieces and not original for the show. So it really just kind of adds the atmosphere of aristocracy and high-class luxury, even when the stuff that the characters are doing doesn't necessarily match that. And it just kind of further emphasizes just how crazy it is. So yeah, ultimately, I don't even know if Neo Yokio is a good show, quite frankly. But I would definitely say it's an interesting show, and I enjoyed watching it, if only for how interesting it was. And the themes it explores, the world that it builds, the characters it presents are all very interesting. And it doesn't necessarily look at these characters the most in-depth because, the show's only 6 20-something minute episodes, so there's only so much you can do there. And hopefully we'll get a season 2 greenlit. But, yeah, I would say check out the first few episodes at least, first 1 or 2. And if you're not interested in it, then it's probably not for you. You probably won't like it. But ultimately, yeah, that's what I would say. If what I've said here intrigues you at all, then check it out. And if not, probably skip it.